In a world full of mysteries, one question resonates in the shadows. What does the Vatican really know about the words of Jesus? For centuries, lost and apocryphal texts have been kept secret, stored in dusty trunks, away from prying eyes. Imagine if these scriptures contained detailed prophecies about the end times, revealing a dark and terrifying future. Why would the Church have hidden such revelations? The forgotten pages of history may hide truths that would change the way we see the world today. What if the truth about the apocalypse is hidden in secret archives, protected by those who fear the people's reaction? The possibility of panic and disorder could have led to drastic decisions. But what else was behind this silence? Throughout this video, we'll delve into intriguing theories and uncover the secrets that may have been kept quiet. Get ready for a tour of hidden mysteries as we explore why the Vatican silenced Jesus' words about the end of the world. The answers may be more surprising than you imagine. When we talk about the Bible, it is common to hear the terms canonical texts and apocryphal texts. Canonical texts are those that have been officially accepted by the Church and are part of the Bible we know today. The Apocrypha are those that were not included for various reasons. Some of these apocryphal texts, such as the Gospel of Thomas, contain teachings that could have revelations about the end of the world and Jesus' predictions. These writings were often left aside because they were considered heretical or unorthodox. One of the questions that arises is why these texts were excluded from the canon. The Church, over the centuries, needed to establish a doctrine that unified the Christian faith. Texts that presented different or contradictory interpretations of canonical messages could cause confusion among the faithful. Thus, by not including these apocrypha, the Church sought to maintain a more cohesive narrative about the message of Jesus and his teachings. Furthermore, some scholars believe that certain passages in the apocryphal texts could have given the faithful a more apocalyptic view of life, something the Church preferred to avoid. The fear of the apocalypse can be a factor that destabilizes faith, and therefore, the exclusion of texts that deal with this topic can be seen as a strategy to control the interpretation of sacred scriptures. On the other hand, the analysis of the differences between canonical and apocryphal texts highlights how complex the history of the Church is. The choices made by religious leaders were not only based on theological issues, but also on social and political contexts. Therefore, the exclusion of certain works is not limited to a matter of faith, but involves a series of factors that have shaped religion over time. Ultimately, these apocryphal texts invite us to reflect on what Jesus' message could have been if all his words had been preserved. The search for these lost writings continues to intrigue many, raising questions about the truth and interpretation of the Christian faith. The Vatican, throughout its history, has made decisions that affected the way the Christian message was disseminated. Often, these decisions were linked to the political and social context of the time. In periods of turbulence, such as the Crusades or the Protestant Reformation, the Church felt the need to preserve a narrative that kept it in power. Suppressing certain messages about the apocalypse could have been a strategy to avoid panic and disunity among the faithful. One of the reasons for this suppression may have been the fear that the dissemination of apocalyptic prophecies would generate a climate of fear and insecurity. During the Middle Ages, for example, the Church had great influence over people's lives, and any deviation from doctrine could threaten this position. Thus, the concealment of texts that talked about the end of times became a tool of social control. Furthermore, the Church was also concerned about maintaining its authority. Announcements about a possible apocalypse could lead believers to question the need for intermediaries, such as priests. The idea that everyone could have direct access to God without the need for a representative could destabilize the hierarchy and the established power structure. In moments of crisis, history has shown that the Church has often chosen to silence voices that could challenge its position. This includes not only apocryphal texts, but also thinkers and theologians who presented divergent views. The Vatican's response in these cases was to reaffirm its official doctrine, reinforcing the idea that the truth about the apocalypse should be kept under control. Thus, the Vatican's historical motivations for hiding or suppressing certain texts help us understand the complexity of the relationship between faith and power. What was at stake was not just the message of Jesus, but also the very survival of the Church in an ever-changing world. Theological interpretations of the end times vary significantly between different Christian traditions. Some denominations emphasize a more literal apocalyptic vision, while others prefer a more symbolic approach. These different interpretations directly influence the Church's doctrine and the way the faithful experience their faith. For example, communities that believe in an imminent apocalypse may live with a sense of urgency and constant preparation. An intriguing question is whether the withholding of certain messages about the apocalypse was related to a need for control over the narrative. If the Church could shape the way the faithful thought about the end of the world, it could also shape their actions and thoughts in the present. This idea suggests that interpretations are not only theological, but also strategic, aiming to maintain order and faith among believers. Furthermore, different theological traditions offer a variety of perspectives on the role of Jesus in the end times. While some emphasize his triumphant return, others highlight the possibility of a more spiritual and less literal interpretation. This diversity of opinions can be seen as a reflection of the challenges the Church faces in trying to unify the faith. Often, theological interpretations are also influenced by cultural and historical factors. At different times, world events such as wars and social crises have shaped perspectives on the apocalypse. This shows that theology is not a stagnant field, but something dynamic that adapts to the realities of life. Therefore, the way in which theological traditions interpret messages about the end of the world can be seen as a reflection not only of faith, but also of the needs and concerns of the society in which they operate. This interplay between faith and context helps us understand the complexity of what it means to wait for the end times. The dissemination of apocalyptic prophecies has always had a great impact on the faith of the faithful. When messages about the end of the world are announced, fear and uncertainty can quickly spread among people. It is common that, upon hearing about imminent catastrophes, many begin to question their beliefs and even their relationship with God. This can lead to crises of faith, where believers feel lost and unsure about their salvation. This panic can be especially intense in times of social or political crisis. When the world seems to be in disarray, anxiety increases, and apocalyptic prophecies gain more space in conversations. Thus, the Church, which should be a place of comfort, can end up becoming a focus of fear. Some people may begin to see the Church as responsible for these alarming messages, which can lead to distancing or even a revolt against the institution. Furthermore, the manipulation of apocalyptic prophecies can also be a strategy to maintain control over the faithful. By creating an atmosphere of fear, the Church can influence the way people behave, leading them to follow teachings and doctrines more closely. This can result in greater obedience to ecclesiastical authorities, who present themselves as the only ones capable of guiding the flock in times of uncertainty. Therefore, it is understandable that the Church has been hesitant to disclose certain information about the apocalypse. The fear that this revelation could cause a collapse in the faith of the faithful is a strong reason to keep some messages secret. By protecting the faithful from panic and distrust, the Church may be trying to preserve the unity of the religious community. The impact of fear and panic on faith is a complex topic that involves both human psychology and social control strategies. The way apocalyptic prophecies are discussed and presented can have profound consequences on people's spiritual lives, shaping their beliefs and behaviors over time. The apocalyptic narrative has been a tool throughout history that the Vatican could have used to consolidate power. By presenting the end of times as an imminent event, the Church could influence the population to follow its guidelines and doctrines. The idea of a final judgment and the need to conform to the precepts of faith are powerful motivators for religious adherence. Furthermore, the way in which the apocalypse narrative is shaped can serve political and social interests. For example, in times of instability, the Church may emphasize the urgency of prophecies to maintain their relevance and authority. This manipulation of the narrative not only ensures the continued power and influence of the Church, but also diverts attention from other social issues that could be more problematic. Another important question is how control of the apocalyptic narrative can lead to the censorship of dissenting voices. Rather than allowing different interpretations of the end times to be discussed openly, the Church may choose to silence these voices to avoid conflict and maintain a unified discourse. This not only shapes the faithful's view of the apocalypse, but also limits the space for theological debate and critical reflection. Furthermore, this manipulation can create a vicious cycle. The more the Church emphasizes the apocalypse narrative, the more believers feel compelled to seek answers and guidance within the institution. This dependence can reinforce the Church's position as the sole source of truth, creating an environment where doubt is discouraged and conformity is rewarded. The manipulation of the apocalyptic narrative is a strategy that dates back centuries. By using fear and uncertainty as tools, the Vatican may have managed to not only maintain its influence, but also shape the behavior of the faithful, ensuring that prophecies and teachings are perpetuated from generation to generation. These days, contemporary culture is full of references to the apocalypse. Films, series, and books often explore end-of-the-world scenarios, raising questions about life, death, and what comes after. This popularity reflects society's deep interest in understanding not only prophecies, but also what they might mean for the present. Thus, the figure of Jesus and his messages about the end of times are reinterpreted, often outside the religious context, generating new narratives. The media, in turn, plays a fundamental role in how people perceive these messages. Documentaries, news, and debates about the apocalypse have become common, presenting theories and interpretations that, in many cases, challenge the traditional view of the Church. This new approach can lead to a more critical reflection on what has been taught over the centuries, showing that the understanding of the apocalypse is not static, but rather dynamic and subject to new discoveries and interpretations. Furthermore, the Internet has facilitated the dissemination of information and theories about the end of the world, allowing previously marginalized voices to gain space. Blogs, social media, and YouTube videos offer a variety of views that often contradict what the Church has traditionally held. This access to different narratives can create an environment of confusion, but also enlightenment for many, as individuals seek to better understand the words of Jesus and how they apply to the world today. In this context, the role of the Vatican is also reevaluated. With new interpretations emerging, people wonder to what extent the Church has influenced the way apocalyptic messages are disseminated or hidden. The desire to understand the historical and theological reasons behind this narrative control leads to greater curiosity and skepticism regarding what is taught in churches. This search for transparency can result in pressure on religious institutions to update and adapt to the new demands of society. The combination of modern culture, media, and new interpretations is reshaping public perception of the apocalypse. Contemporary voices, which often challenge orthodoxy, generate a broader and more plural dialogue about what the end times mean. As people move away from traditional narratives, discussion about the messages of Jesus and the role of the Vatican becomes increasingly relevant and necessary, reflecting a collective search for understanding and meaning in an ever-changing world. And so we come to the end of this intriguing journey through the hidden teachings of Jesus and the mysteries surrounding the Vatican. But the question still hangs in the air. What else could be hiding in the shadows of the Scriptures? Do these lost words really have the power to transform our understanding of the end of the world? Imagine people's reactions when they learn that there are passages that reveal a future more terrifying than we can imagine. Why would the Church choose to keep this secret? Afraid of destabilizing faith? Or was it something even deeper, a strategy to maintain control over the masses? As we reflect on all of this, think, what would you do if you discovered a hidden truth that changed your outlook on life and death? What if the apocalypse wasn't just an event, but a series of choices we all make daily? Keep questioning, keep searching. What else can we discover about Jesus, the Vatican, and these apocryphal texts? Don't forget to leave your opinion in the comments and share your theories. After all, what is behind the words that were never spoken?